What's up? How you doing? Here we are, beautiful day today, clear skies, a little bit on the warm side. It actually feels like midsummer right now. So, what can you do? It's not that bad. It's dry, so it's not overbearing. Have a little bit of water here with plenty of ice. Delicious. We have good tasting water. You know, it's filtered, but it has a very pleasing flavor. So, driving around in LA, and I noticed that every so often we have these poles that have sirens on the top. You know, like those movies where Godzilla was coming and they would hit the button and the sirens would go off and everybody would start running around in a panic. I think these were put up, during World War II for a possible invasion, which is kind of weird that never happened. You would think somebody from the enemy forces, Axis powers, would have launched an attack somehow. I know that Japan did it, Pearl Harbor, but mainland USA was never attacked. But they did have the sirens all around, and probably in today's world, I mean, we have the internet and all that, but that could go down instantly. So we probably have these things in case of a nuclear attack, or as some people say, nuclear. I have one of these here, similar, but you hear that? That sounds like either fire department, police department, or missiles are coming. And I picked this up a while ago. Still smells brand new. But that sound to me is always like get up and go. Get up and go. There could be a hurricane, or in this case, a major earthquake, which we haven't had in a while. I remember years ago, like 15 years or so, we were having little ones quite frequently. I mentioned a long time ago that I was at Walmart one time. This is like, I don't know, 2007, 2008, that time frame, and shopping around. You know, I used to go every Monday, pick up some items, and then I was in line, and I sensed a little bit of a, you know, one of those motions, and I said, oh, the second I felt that, I said, it feels like by the time I got earthquake into my brain, it started shaking like this, right? And it lasted 3 seconds, not that long. It was short enough to give you a little bit of panic, but not long enough to knock anything off the shelves. And the lady that was the cashier, she kind of like took a second, and then she started crying. She got really frightened, and I was like, oh man, I'm glad that wasn't a big one. You know, what a mess it would have made in here, injuries and all that. So I paid, I left. My wife was in a high-rise building at the time, and she told me that the whole place was wobbling, like Weeble Wobble. But I said generally those are safe. They could probably take a 9 or an 8. And we had minor ones after that as well. So, you know, I remember one time I was in the kitchen, and I felt like a one of these motions, like I was on a wave, rolling motion, and that one lasted quite a bit. It was like 10-12 seconds long. And at that other time I was at a restaurant, felt a little bit of a, you know, one of these things. But it's a weird sensation. You know, no matter how solid you think the ground you're stepping on is, the earthquake demolishes that belief instantly. And it was you know, you realize that you're nothing on this planet. You're a speck, you're a flake. And another time I was in a hotel, and I was sitting there watching television. Let them go. Kind of like my siren. was at a hotel, had tall windows, and the first thing I started hearing was that ching, 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 you know, that shaking of the windows, and then I felt that back and forth. Another time I was in a shower. I was in a shower, quake hits, and I'm you know, trying to hold on. And then one other time I was going down a flight of stairs, and the quake hit there. And then there's been a few times when I've been in the car and I didn't notice them, because the car, you're moving on a highway or something, and the suspension system, it fools you. You can't tell that was a quake. But there's been quite a few. But in recent times, we haven't had anything. I mean, I think we had something a while ago, and we have a chandelier on the front. And if we think we feel something, we immediately look at the chandelier. The chandelier will detect anything. And then if you see kind of like, you know, a little bit of emotion, just had a quake. One time I was in bed, this was like a year ago, I don't know, it was like a minor quake. I felt the bed kind of shake a little bit, but nothing was going on, right? And so I go, let me see. And I looked at the chandelier, and the chandelier was going side to side, slightly. And that's how we know. If it's a minor one. If it's a major one, then you feel it, you know, to your teeth. I've been up to the San Andreas fault line a few times. Never had a quake while I was on it, but I've been up there, I think 4 times. 4 times, very peaceful. The last time I went, I went from the backside, and that's where Chevron is. And it's all, you know, like signs, no stopping. I guess you can go through, but you can't stop. And Chevron is everywhere back there. They're digging, you know, got all these machines going. And then you keep going, and you end up in an area where it's just you. The only person I ran into was a guy on a 10-speed, and he kept going. So I stopped there. You don't hear a bird in there. Very quiet. You can hear your own brain thinking. And, you know, if you climb up on the mountain, I mean on the hill, you can actually see the line, you know, where the 2 sides are kind of moving apart. So, very interesting, you know. A friend of mine, you know, I was just joking. He said to me, you know, what kind of work you doing? And I said, I'm the guy that goes into the Earth's crust, and I check on the tectonic plates. And if there's any, you know, section that's loose, I will take railroad tracks and spike them in from one side to the other to prevent slippage. And he said to me, he goes, at least you have an interesting job. And he believed it. So anyway, anybody knows anything about the Earth's crust or tectonic plates, you strapping railroad tracks from one side to the other, no matter how many you put, will do absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. There is a place that's a lot closer than where I go, because I've been to the San Andreas fault line up in Taft, you know, as you're heading towards Bakersfield. But there is a place closer. One is the Devil's Punch Bowl, and the other one is down at El Cajon, where the tectonic plates have actually broken through the earth, and you can actually see, you know, that it looks like concrete, you know, sandy concrete. You actually can see that stuff sticking out of the ground. You can climb on it, and it's very safe because it's got a good grip. One time I was, you know, coming down the damn thing, and as I'm coming down, I'm sliding down because it was pretty steep, and I had my hands holding, and my finger went into a groove while I was still moving, and it snapped it back. Luckily, it didn't break. But I was like, hey, I gotta watch that. So, a lot of, you know, I'm fascinated with the extremes of the planet. I'd love to go to the North Pole, South Pole. And to me, I think the South Pole is a bit more interesting because it's actually land with mountains and things like that, where the North Pole is just an ice sheet. Although it is kind of creepy that you're standing on top of something that right below you is a deep ocean. You know, kind of creepy, and you can't survive up there because there's nothing to eat. Not that there's much to eat down in the South Pole besides penguins and, you know, good fish. But I'd like to go down there. The Drake's Passage, that's where that crazy water is. Rough terrain with the water terrain. It's the Pacific and Atlantic meeting and not getting along and creating all these waves. But they have a boat that goes from Argentina all the way across into Antarctica, and I would love to visit there. But I don't want to just go, you know, to the shoreline. I want to get off the boat and I want to walk a few miles in, just to say I was on the damn thing. I don't want to, you know, just look at it. But there are places like that, tall mountains. Like to visit the Andes. Maybe go to that place for the team. What was it? Crickets. That team that had to eat others from the plane crash in order to survive. Hey, you may think it's gross, but if it comes to life or death, you gotta pick life. You gotta pick life, and if picking life means eating, you know, your buddy's arm, you gotta do it. Even though now, when you have a supermarket, that's the last thing you're thinking of doing. But in a survival situation, and hope no one's put in one, but if you are put in one, you will eat the arm, the leg, you know. You want to start off with those kind of things. You don't want to go, okay, I'll do the organs first. Yeah. There's a plaque up there on the site. I'd like to go up there and visit that. And then in, I think it's in, what country is that? Ecuador, I believe. That's where the place where you're closer to space than any other place on the planet, and there's a mountain there, and because of the equator and the Earth spinning, it pulls outward, so you have a peak where the equator is, and then you have a mountain on top of that. So if you're on top of that mountain, you're actually closer to the space, to the universe, than you are on Mount Everest. So I'd like to go there. Mount Everest, love to go there. I'd like to go to northern Pakistan, check out the mountains, beautiful mountains up there. A lot of people don't realize they hear Pakistan, they think it's some ridiculous country. Pakistan is a beautiful country. Beautiful mountain ranges, beautiful national parks, but problem is a lot of people will say, when I mention this, that not safe there. Not safe, and I don't know. Maybe it's not safe in Karachi, maybe it's not safe in places like where it's urbanized, or there's no tourism, but I think places where it's known for tourism, I think it's safe, right? I'd like to go there. Nepal, like to go there, get a handmade blanket, and not to climb the mountain. I mean, that's not really something I feel I could do. You know, these are people that go up there that are really trained, they know what they're doing. I'd like to just go see the mountain from the base. Maybe go a little bit up, maybe a couple of thousand feet. You know, up to 10,000 I'm okay with. Then after that you get into rough weather, light on oxygen, and not that fun. But K2, another location. Mount Fuji, another place, beautiful. Sweden, Switzerland, always neutral. Swiss Alps, the Italian Alps, those, you know, beautiful places to visit. It's another. I'd like to go to the northernmost point of Alaska, Kamchatka, which is the east side of Russia, that little section that hangs out into the ocean. If you go to Google Earth and you zoom into that area, you will see how beautiful it is. I mean, literally, it's your own place when you're there. It's not busy at all, you know, and I look at it and it's just like, you know, it's all to yourself. Beautiful mountains all around. Now, I don't know how you get there. I'm sure that you can go from Alaska, it's a 50-mile gap, and take a plane and land some. First of all, anything in Alaska that you want to visit, most places actually, too much of the actually. I'm going to try and, you know, remove the actually all the time, because that's become like you know, your mind needs time to think, so you throw actually in there. You don't need, just unnecessary. But anyway, you take all these little planes anywhere in Alaska to go, It's a little dangerous because small planes, not as safe as the big planes. They have one engine, something happens, you know, and even though they're light, they don't really glide well. But, you know, you need them to be able to visit these remote locations, and I'd like to go to that part of Russia and be allowed to roam around by myself. You know, I don't want a tour guide, I don't want a Sherpa, don't want any of that. I just want a nice warm jacket, nice pair of socks, nice boots, you know, gloves if I need them, nice hat, and then, you know, be allowed to roam around, have a sandwich with me. Yeah, there's places like that that are on my mind constantly. You know, I know the usual places that people want to see. They want to go to Paris, they want to go to London, they want to go see Spain, you know, they want to go see Rome. I'd like to see those places as well, but I also want to see the obscure places on this planet, like volcanoes, extreme mountain ranges, deep tunnels, things like that. But my bride, not so much. Nothing more enjoyable than nice tasting water with nice ice, you know. And I'm not a fan of drinking soda in general, but what I want to say is I'm not a fan of drinking soda without ice. If I want to have soda, I want it to be like a glass this tall, filled up with ice all the way to the top, nice clear ice cubes, and then put the soda in there and sip it slow. To me, the ice enhances. Some people think, oh, it dilutes the soda. I don't care. I don't care. By diluting it, if that means it makes it taste better, I'm okay with diluting it. Plus, I'm not sitting there drinking it slowly so all the ice becomes water. You know, I'm drinking it way before the ice melts. I just want it to be cold. And I feel like the ice adds a bit of, like it mellows it a little bit, so the flavor gets tastier. And I heard now that Coca-Cola is going to, in America, is going to go cane sugar, by the way, as they say. It's going to go cane sugar now, which means they're going to start using cane sugar instead of corn syrup, which you know, they always would come out and say, well, there's no difference between Mexican Coca-Cola and European Coca-Cola. It's the same ingredients. The difference being that, and I don't know why they don't want to admit it, but the difference being is that the Mexican and the European Coke, they use cane sugar, and we use that corn crap, corn syrup. Now, you say, well, you know, it's the same, the molecular structure is the same. I find that there's a bit of an aftertaste to that. You know, if you take pure cane sugar and you try it, melt it in water and, you know, try it, it's going to be okay. If you take the corn syrup and sip it down, you're going to notice a flavor. And I think that's the flavor that Coca-Cola doesn't want to admit to. But I'm not a fan of corn syrup. Plus, it sounds kind of nasty. Syrup. Put some syrup in the Coke, like I'm putting molasses in my Coke. So yeah, I like though a nice cold Coke from Mexico. When I go shopping, sometimes not, I go shopping often, but sometimes I will say, okay, I'm gonna get a Coke. But I never ever get the canned Coke made in the USA or the plastic stuff. I get the glass bottle, and it says Coca-Cola made in Mexico, and I love it. I put Coke in there, the glass with a ton of ice, and I have a little sippy poo here and there, and it's really delicious. Yeah, there's a better flavor to it, and I think, you can quote me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that Mexican Coca-Cola has a higher caffeine level. I think. I have to check that out, verify it, but I really think that Coca-Cola made in Mexico is higher in caffeine, and the European one too. There's really no difference between if you go to Europe and try Coca-Cola there, or you go to Mexico and try it there. They taste the same. And if you come here and try Coca-Cola, it's different. Sweeter, I don't know, there's something about it. I try and avoid it if I can, or if I can't, if I go to a place and, you know, you got like a Coke, I want a ton of ice in there. I'm a nice guy. Today is very, very warm. Very warm. What's going on here? You know, with these phones, people, they find you anywhere you go. You know, in the old days, you were home. You know, back then it was blind pickups on the phone. You didn't know who it was. You had to say, all right, I really want to talk to anybody now. What if it's this person I can't stand? Phone's ringing, you don't know. You would just pick up, hello. And be somebody that you don't want to talk to. You're like, I picked it up, shouldn't have. And then they invented caller ID. Then you could see who it was, and you didn't have to pick up. And which is a good idea, you know, it's a good concept that you would be able to see. Back then it was like strangers knocking on your door and you letting them in. You know, you want to know who they are. Don't just show up uninvited. But yeah, you always, like, the phone would ring, you're like, who is that? Is that my teacher calling to complain? And that did happen quite a few times during dinner time. I remember when I was a kid, sitting there, you know, eating the spaghetti or whatever, the phone would ring at like 8:15 at night, and my father did not appreciate phone calls coming to my house after 7, but especially after 8. You know, 7 you could get away with it, but if it was after 8, like 8:01, my father would get annoyed. He's like, who's that? He's calling at this time. Didn't like that, and I knew if anybody called after that time, it was not going to be good news. So I remember one time I was sitting down there, and I had just skipped school. And I thought I got away with it. But no, that was wrong, you know, idea. Had this lady, I'm not going to mention her name because she, you know, doesn't deserve it. But this lady who would give me a ride after school to come back home, and I skipped school that Friday, did my little thing in town, you know, whatever, and then, you know, the phone rings at night and it's her. So every Friday I had to give her a check for $15, 15, for the service she provided, you know. So I'm sitting there and thinking everything's cool, and then I see my father. Oh, yeah, I gave it to him. He goes, I gave it to him. I go, what's he talking about? He gave it to him. And then I heard, I gave him the check. Oh, he didn't give it to you? Oh, okay. And I go, uh-oh. That's gotta be the lady who drives me home from school. So anyway, he gets off the phone, and my father is outraged. He is turning into the Hulk. That's how mad he was. So I'm not gonna get into the details of the anger, but he was pissed off. So anyway, as a result of her doing that to me, I went on Monday and I handed her the little envelope with the $15 check in there, and I said to her, you know what, wait till Monday. If you don't see me handing it to you on Monday and I'm in school and I pretend, oh, I already gave it to you, then call my father. But if you see me not in school on Friday, assume I'm sick. You don't need to call my house and make a complaint. You're going to get your money, your $15 on Monday. As a result of that, I punished her and myself at the same time. No longer was I going to use her for a ride, but I was going to take the bus and train home, which was really far from me. And I did it because I didn't want to be in the same car with her after that. So I stopped using her. She lost $15 from that point on every week. And I never used her again. I just took the train home. So that was the end of that. But, you know, you got me in trouble for no reason, and it's not like you weren't getting your money on Monday. There is a situation where I could have been sick, and you just, you know, didn't get paid on Friday. And was $15 that much for you that you couldn't wait till Monday? So anyway, that's all in the past. We're talking about, you know, like 8th grade here, so LAPD flying around. I'd love to get in a helicopter, but a helicopter, once you have engine problems and the blades on top start, you know, to stop spinning, then you're going down. You're going down, and nothing can save you, because helicopters do not have any ability to glide. They fall like a rock, and there's no place. I mean, maybe you can land on a bunch of bushy trees if you're not that high up, and it'll cushion your fall. But other than that, helicopters, you go down, you're out. You're out. Yeah. So he went all the way down there, and then he did a U-turn, and now he's coming back this way, and now he's doing more than a U-turn. Now he's coming towards me. Yep. Oh, now he's going towards the other way again. So yeah, he just did it. He did an O-turn. Well, that's how it goes. I don't know what they get a call. They're like, okay, you're going the wrong way. Make a U-turn. Nope, you're going the wrong way. Keep going. Okay, now go back where you came from again. I remember one time sitting here, I look up in the sky and I could see like a little thing moving across the sky. It looked like it was way up there. I couldn't figure out what it was. Luckily, I am a man who owns binoculars. So yeah, he's just doing a circle. Now he's over there, still making a circle. So anyway, I'm a man who owns binoculars, and I went and got my binoculars on. I looked, and it was a big white balloon. Somebody released it, and it was way up there. I did a thing one time here. I don't know if anybody took pictures of it, but it was a dark night, no moon out, and I took this big balloon, and at the bottom I tied these two little blinking lights, red, white, and they were blinking, and I released it. And when it was first maybe 100 feet up, you could tell it was a balloon. But when it got higher than that, it literally looked like a unidentified flying object. And I said, if somebody, you know, if this was the desert and somebody saw that, first of all, they would think that it was Edwards Air Force Base, because that's the area that, you know, I head towards that area. So if anything gets released there, you start thinking that's from the military base. I actually drove in there one time by accident. Again, actually. I drove in there, and once you pass a certain point, you can't make a U-turn anymore. And I noticed I was going in the wrong direction. I didn't want to go into Edwards Air Force Base, but now I'm going through the checkpoint, and you can't make a U-turn. You make a U-turn, I think they come after you, like you're suspicious. Suspicion is not a crime, though. It's not a felony or a misdemeanor, so they can't really, you know, hold you on suspicion. So I go there, I'm just going to go to the window. I'm telling them I made a mistake. And I go to the window, I got in on this road by accident. I just want to go back the other way. And he's like, hold on. And he gets on the thing, he's like, oh. And I'm like, all right, now what? So he goes, I'm going to need to see some ID. Now, I could have been like, I haven't committed a crime, you know. So I go, I'm on a military base. I gave him the ID. He looked it over. He made a call somewhere. And then he handed it to me like that. And he goes, all right, what you going to do here? He goes, you're going to go down to that pole there, and you're going to make a U-turn over there. I go, I know, I knew that. I knew that's exactly what I was going to do. And then I left. But I felt like if I was like a little mouthy, I would have been there for like a day. He had been, okay, pull on over. Let's check that car out. So luckily, there was a quick thing, and then I left. But I had a strange situation one time in the desert with a balloon. It was a weird balloon. So me and my kids are there. We're trying to fly a kite or something, and we're doing a barbecue. And then about, I don't know, a couple of 100 yards away from us, there was a purple, kind of deflated balloon. Just sitting down there, you know. It was like, I don't know, 60% deflated. And every once in a while I would notice it, and it would like, dun, 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 come closer to us, come closer to us. Before I knew it, the balloon was right next to us. And it was sitting there for like an hour. I looked at it and I go, that looks like, garbage. And then at some point, even though it was like so flat, it lifted up and went into the sky. As if it said, okay, I've seen what's going on here, kind of boring, I'm out of here. And it left. And since that time, I have discovered many, many, many of those purple, like, aluminum looking balloons. I don't know what they are. They seem innocent, but then they seem to follow you. So I don't know what's going on, who's listening anymore. Now it's like you're talking and everybody's listening. I look at night into the universe. I'm fascinated that we exist in this monster. I have no idea what's going on here, neither does anyone else. I feel, though, the older I get, the more I don't believe the Big Bang Theory. I just, like, how can you come up with such nonsense? First of all, how do you even know that that's the case? You don't even know how big the universe is. They always say that, well, the universe, let's use a round number here, is 100 billion light years, from one side to the other, right? So 50 billion, that way, 50 billion that way. And how do you know that? You don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know what the edge of the universe is. You don't know what the event horizon is obviously not the end of the universe, so you don't know how far beyond that it goes. That would be like looking out into the ocean and saying that the planet Earth is 6 miles, this way, 6 miles that way, 6 miles that way, 6 miles that way, because that's pretty much as far as you can see. That's where the sky meets the ocean, at 6 miles. So based on that observation, you would think that the Earth was only about 6 miles in each direction. Well, we know that's not the case, and I bet you anything, the universe is not 100 billion light years across. So if it's not that big and it's much bigger, then how do you reverse engineer that number to say that the age of the universe is 13.8 billion years? That's got to be the ultimate garbage. And I think one day they're going to come out and they're going to say, okay, we made a mistake on that. The universe is much bigger than that. Therefore, it can't be 13.8 billion years old. All right? It can only be that if you know that it's this big, and in order for it to expand from this to this takes 13.8 billion years, then yes, you'd be accurate. But if you don't know the actual size of the universe, these numbers, 13.8 billion years old, are meaningless, and you don't even know if there was a Big Bang. You don't know that, and how do you go from a Big Bang to being infinite? You have some scientists come out, they say, well, the Earth, the universe is probably infinite. How do you get from a start to infinity? Does that make any sense? Maybe our mind is not capable of handling that, but I don't think that you have a beginning if you have infinity. And infinity is hard to wrap your mind around anyway. So, I just, and then the other thing with the Webb satellite, the telescope, they have found fully developed galaxies on the edge of the event horizon. That means that going back, like 13.8 billion years at the beginning of the Big Bang, as they say, those galaxies should not be there. They should not be well formed. The fact that they're well formed tells you that the universe is much, much older than what they think, and it could be infinite in age. It could be forever here, and it just takes different forms. It recycles. We don't know any of that. So they keep saying the Big Bang, the Big Bang. I used to think, oh, that's how it happened. It used to be the size of a pinhead, and then it just, blew up for no reason, and here we are now, and we may go back to a big crunch. I no longer think that that's the case. The more I hear them, and the more they talk about the Big Bang, the more I realize, how would you even know that? How would you even know that? You have no idea how big the actual universe is in order for you to figure out anything about a Big Bang. Now, let's say the universe is trillions of times bigger than the observable. Might be even quadrillions of times bigger than the observable. Then that would change the age and throw all the other ideas out the window. So yeah, I'm kind of tired of hearing about the Big Bang and the beginning. It may be that the universe always existed. It just does a recycling process every so often, so you have a constant existence of it. And maybe it does a cycle where this portion is alive now, slowly dies off, but as it's dying off, this side comes into being. And that's how it is. It's always been that way. And maybe this is not the prime reality. Maybe this is something of a subset. Maybe the prime reality is elsewhere. I don't think we know anything. I think all these things that we think we know right now are going to be revised. Like in 100 years, they'll be looking back and saying, oh, they used to believe in a Big Bang. How ridiculous is that? Now we know that the universe is eternal. Anyway, I'm going to end it a little short here. My bride is inside, and she wants water with ice. So I'm going to go get her some water with ice. That's it for now. Ciao.